A woman's scream cuts through the cold night air. It's a sound of pure terror, but the roar of the crowd quickly drowns it out. They surge forward, their faces lit by a hungry, growing fire. In the middle of the square, a pyre has been built, and tied to the stake is a woman. Her crime wasn't murder, it wasn't treason. Her crime, at least according to the whispers that condemned her, was love. Or maybe a love that was forbidden, a passion that was rejected, a jealousy so toxic it could only be cleansed by fire. This isn't a fairy tale. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, a dark paranoia swept across Europe, fueled by religious panic and unimaginable cruelty. By the time it was over, an estimated 40,000 to 60,000 people had been executed for witchcraft. The story we think we know is all about devil worship and black magic, but the real story is often much more personal and a lot more human. How did heartbreak, spurned advances, and simple neighborhood arguments spiral into a continent-wide hunt that sent tens of thousands to their deaths? The answer isn't just about the devil, it's about the darkness in our own hearts. Before the great witch hunts kicked off, magic was just a part of life. Local healers, sometimes called cunning folk, had remedies for sickness, charms for finding lost things, and yes, even potions for love. For centuries, this folk magic and Christianity existed side by side, uneasily. But in the late 15th century, things started to change. Europe was in chaos. Religious reformation, political turmoil, economic collapse. People were scared, and they needed someone to blame. And one single terrifying book gave them a target. In 1486, a German churchman named Heinrich Kramer published what would become one of the most destructive books in history, the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches. This wasn't just a book, it was a manual for murder. It laid out a terrifying new idea. Witchcraft wasn't just superstition anymore. It was an organized conspiracy with the devil against all of Christianity. It was heresy. And while it wasn't the only cause, this book, spread rapidly by the new printing press, gave priests and magistrates the intellectual firepower they needed. It was the playbook for the slaughter to come. Kramer's book was also pathologically misogynistic. It argued that women, being the weaker sex, were way more likely to fall for the devil's temptations, and it zeroed in on their relationships. The book is full of stories about witches causing impotence, casting love spells, or wrecking marriages out of pure spite. It took the messy, powerful human emotions of love, lust, and jealousy and twisted them into acts of pure evil. So how did it actually start? Not with some shadowy cult meeting in the woods. It started with a whisper, a rumor, a grudge. The European witch hunt was mostly a local problem, driven by small-town tensions. Think about it. Your crops fail right after a nasty argument with a neighbor. A child gets sick after a strange old woman gives them a funny look. A young man gets rejected by a woman he wants, and his wounded pride tells him she must have bewitched him. That's all it took. In a world soaked in fear, any misfortune could be blamed on maleficium, harmful magic, and accusations tied to love and sex were shockingly common. In 16th century Italy, where many people were unmarried, trials for love magic were everywhere. Women looking for a charm to land a husband could easily find themselves accused. Healers who offered love potions were suddenly seen as dealers in demonic magic. In France, the case of a priest named Urbain Grandier shows just how deadly this could get. A group of nuns, led by a woman who may have been obsessed with him, accused him of bewitching them with demonic orgies. He was brutally tortured and burned at the stake. It didn't matter who you were. Greed, envy, anger, and hatred. That was the real fuel for the fire. Once you were accused, the system was built to find you guilty. You'd be stripped and searched for a witch's mark. Any mole or birthmark could be seen as proof of your pact with the devil. Then came the ordeals. One of the most famous was the swimming test. They'd tie your hands and feet and throw you into a river. If you sank, you were innocent, though you probably drowned. If you floated, it was said the pure water was rejecting your sin, proving you were a witch. There was almost no way out. The entire legal process depended on one thing, a confession. Without it, a conviction was tough, but the authorities had their ways of getting one. Torture wasn't just allowed, it was a systematic, brutal part of the process. The point wasn't to find truth, it was to force the accused to agree to a story that was already written for them. That they met the devil, signed his book, danced at a witch's Sabbath, and cursed their neighbors. The methods were pure, calculated agony. The strappado would yank you into the air by your wrists tied behind your back, dislocating your shoulders as you were dropped over and over. The rack would stretch your body until your limbs popped out of their sockets. Thumb screws and leg clamps shattered bone. Even just sleep deprivation could break the strongest person. Under that kind of pain, people confessed to anything. They'd say they flew on broomsticks, had sex with the devil, and most importantly, they would name names. This is what turned a single accusation into a wildfire. One confession, ripped out of someone through torture, could lead to dozens of new arrests, creating a chain reaction of terror that could swallow entire towns. A confession wasn't about telling the truth. It was a desperate plea for a quicker death, the only way to make the pain stop. The final act of this horrifying show was the execution. These weren't quiet, hidden events. They were massive public spectacles designed to scare everyone into obedience and show off the power of the church and state. In the heartland of the witch craze, places like Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, burning at the stake was the execution of choice. And burning was chosen for a reason. Fire was seen as a purifying element, the only thing that could cleanse the land of the witch's evil and destroy their body completely. In England and its American colonies, hanging was more common, but in Central Europe, the pyre was the icon of the hunt. The condemned were marched through the streets, sometimes strangled right before the fire was lit as a final twisted act of mercy. Then in front of the whole town, they were burned alive. These events were a brutal warning to everyone watching. Don't step out of line, don't question authority, and don't attract the wrong kind of attention. Behind the huge numbers are real people caught in this nightmare. People like Katharina Hinault, a successful postmistress in Cologne, Germany. She was a respected, powerful woman, but in 1627, her success likely made her a target for jealous rivals, and she was accused of witchcraft. Even after horrific torture, she refused to confess. She insisted she was innocent right up to the end, when she was strangled and then burned. And across the ocean in America, there's the story of Bridget Bishop. Her own husband had called her a bad wife years earlier, claiming the devil was her companion. They fought publicly, and she had a reputation for not conforming to the strict Puritan world. Those old rumors almost certainly sealed her fate when she was arrested again during the Salem witch trials. This time, she didn't escape. Bridget Bishop was the very first person executed in Salem, hanged on June 10, 1692. And then there's the love witch, this terrifying idea that haunted the whole era. While most accusations came from general anxiety, the fear of female power and sexuality was always bubbling under the surface. Women who knew about herbs, who acted as healers or midwives, they were especially vulnerable. Helping to ease the pain of childbirth could be twisted into an act against God's will. A love potion could be seen as demonic mind control. Their knowledge was a form of power, and in a world desperate to control them, that power was turned into something evil. The history of the witch trials is a brutal reminder of how easily fear can be turned into a weapon. We think these stories are incredibly important to tell. If you agree and you want to see more dives into the dark corners of history, the best way to support the channel is by liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps us keep these histories alive. So how did it all end? The great European witch hunt slowly faded away as the Age of Enlightenment brought new ideas about reason and science. But the scars it left are permanent. The trials weren't just about superstition. They were the result of a perfect storm, a society gripped by anxiety, a legal system that cared more about accusation than evidence, and a religious ideology that gave people permission to persecute their neighbors. But at its heart, this is a human story. It's a story of how our most private and powerful emotions, love, jealousy, rejection, and spite, can be turned into public weapons when people are afraid. It shows how easy it is to create a scapegoat to blame for everything that goes wrong, whether it's a failed crop, a sick child, or just a broken heart. The image of the witch burning at the stake is a symbol from our past, But the patterns of panic and persecution are a warning that still echoes today, reminding us just how quickly the fires can be lit.